Hey everyone, my name is Lizzie, and today I'm here to talk to you about 5 huge regrets I've had during homebrewing. The first regret is using baking soda to increase the pH of my wash. So this was in my beginning homebrewing days when I added a piece of lemon directly inside my fermenting jar. And what it did, it destroyed the pH. It made it too low. It was at 3, and this is not optimal for the yeast. Therefore, in order to increase the pH, I added baking soda. And silver lining is that it did increase the pH. I had to add a ton. Surprisingly, a baking soda pack is roughly this big, and I added about half of the pack. That's because that's how much it took for the pH to increase from 3 all the way up to 5. And a little did I know that I can add calcium carbonate. And what this calcium carbonate is, it's a white powder that looks like baking powder, so you can confuse the two, but calcium carbonate has no taste. I tasted this last week and the taste is pretty neutral. Therefore, you can add, and do not worry, you do not have to add half. This is equivalent to roughly 1 cup of baking soda. You do not have to add 1 cup of calcium carbonate to increase your pH. Last time when I added calcium carbonate, it only took me 1 teaspoon to stir it up, and based on my pH strips, it gave me a pH of 5. Therefore, you do not need as much, and it will not affect the taste. So calcium carbonate is something that I would recommend. Using lemon is something I regret. So anything linked to lemon, for example, lime or any other acid fruits like berries, blueberries, strawberries, these have low pHs as well. And I would avoid these in making your homebrew if you want to make your life easier and make your fermentation last until the end. And how do you know if your fermentation has reached the end? You can use a hydrometer, and what the hydrometer does, it measures the amount of sugar left inside your homebrew. And at the end, once the yeast has eaten all the sugar, your hydrometer should read at 0.990 to 1.000. If it reads at a number higher than that, that means that there is more sugar left for the yeast to eat. You can either ferment the rest by adjusting your wash, or you can decide to just drink it as is. It'll have a sweeter flavor. However, if you have a preference for sweet or sweeter alcohol, you can drink it as is. My second regret in homebrewing is buying a digital pH meter. Why, you may ask? Because pH strips do the job just as well. And I bought a digital pH meter because once you're new in homebrewing, you think that you have to buy the most expensive equipment for the best results, and this is false. The digital pH meter costs roughly $14 Canadian, and in comparison, the pH strips cost $5 Canadian. Therefore, it's 1/3 of the price. And the digital pH meter is more complicated to use because you have to calibrate it. You have 3 powders that you can use to calibrate your equipment. And on the contrary, the pH strips, you just have to dip it in the liquid, and whatever color comes out will represent the pH of your liquid. And for those who have swimming pools, you may have calculated the pH of your swimming pools, or for those who do gardening, you may have calculated the pH of your soil. So this is the same process. The pH meter or strips range between 0 and 14 pH, 0 to 4 being more acidic liquids, and 6 to 14 being more alkaline, with water being at 5. So water is a neutral liquid. And in order to avoid any homebrewing mistakes or to avoid any stuck fermentation, honestly, what I use is water, sugar, and yeast, and it does the job pretty well. A third regret of homebrewing is on the same topic of using water, is using cranberry juice instead. So why would I use cranberry juice? This is to have the color of red or white wine. Therefore, in order to replicate red wine, I would use red cranberry juice. And in order to replicate white wine, I would use white cranberry juice. However, the fermentation only started but stopped midway because of the preservatives. And this is a major issue when using juice. However, I can say that I've used apple juice in the past, and every time I use apple juice, regardless of the brand, it always ferments until the end. And this is because when you look at the ingredients of apple juice, the preservatives are
ascorbic acid, which is a vitamin C, and malic acid, which represents sourness. And these types of preservatives do not act against the yeast. It's only sulfites and other preservatives that act against the yeast.
If you see items such as ascorbic acid, anything that seems hard to understand, this is probably a preservative. There are different types of preservatives that you can find in juices or in soft drinks, and this is so the liquid will not get rotten and you'll be able to buy it in the store after several weeks, several months, even several years. So this is necessary to avoid expiration and to avoid rot. However, the preservatives do not act well against the yeast. In order to replicate red wine without the preservatives, my next project is to use cherry sauce. So this is red, and the cherry sauce, when I read the ingredients, it had the preservative similarly to the apple all the way to the end. Therefore, the preservatives do not represent a big portion of the cherry sauce. It's just a little slither of the ingredients, and we'll see if this affects the homebrew, if this affects the yeast or not. Fingers crossed that after a week or two, the hydrometer will read 0.990 to 1.000, meaning that the fermentation will be over. A fourth regret that I've done during homebrewing is using a soda stream. So for those who have never seen a soda stream, I have one here. This is what it looks like. And what it is, usually what I do, I have a bottle, for example, a bottle of water that I just roll up here. And once the bottle is attached to the soda stream, I would press this button in order to add fizz into my water. So innocent thought, what I did is I filled this bottle with homebrew that had no carbonation. And in order to add carbonation, I would press the top to add fizz, and once I removed the bottle from the soda stream, it just blew up everywhere. It was an explosion. It was tons of cleaning to do. Therefore, I would not suggest this. What I would suggest are carbonation drops, and these carbonation drops, I purchased some here. What you can do, you can add 1 carbonation drop per bottle of beer. However, if you have a different container of a different size, you have to do a little math. And you have to see how many of those bottles of beer can fit into your bigger jar. So let's say you have 1 gallon in your fermenting jar, but you're done fermenting and you want to add carbonation drops in there. You can calculate 1 fermenting jar is equivalent to, let's say, 8 beers. Therefore, you would add 8 carbonation drops in order to have the same amount of fizz into your bigger jar. And if you want to have a fizzy drink, this typically applies to any beers or ciders. We do not need carbonation drops for wine because wine typically does not have any fizz. You just drink it as it is. And my 5th regret in home brewing is using oak chips. And what oak chips are, it's what you can use if you do not have those big wine barrels to age your wine or your whiskey or other drinks that you make. You put your drink inside these barrels, and the longer you keep them, the better they taste. And by better, this is subjective. It will give it a more experienced flavor. It'll have different tones, like vanilla tones. It'll have a sort of perplexity on your palate. And this is an acquired taste. Therefore, if you prefer fruit or sweeter wine, you do not need to age your alcohol. However, I wanted to see what this would taste like, so I have oak chips, and what I had to do with these oak chips is first wash them. Therefore, I put them in water for about 30 minutes, soaked them, and once they were clean, I had to dry them and then put them inside either a barbecue or air fryer to toast them. And depending on the level of heat, the oak chips will give you different flavors. For example, if you heat them up to 230 degrees Celsius, it'll give you hints of vanilla. Versus if you heat them up to 400 degrees Celsius, it'll give you hints of honey. If you'd like, here's the chart that determines what temperature of oak chips will give you what flavors. And once I heated it up to this temperature, I added it into my alcohol, which was already fermented. And after a week, I tasted it and it just tasted like wood. It was not sophisticated at all. It was not good. I had to throw it away. Therefore, I would avoid this. And if you want to have these tones, I would suggest to just use less oak chips, because I put oak chips in my jar and the oak chips occupied 1/3 of the jar. Therefore, if you want to have a more slight hint of vanilla or a slighter hint of these oak chip flavors, I would suggest to just add less. And if you'd like tips and tricks on how to make alcohol and what to avoid, book a class. The link is in the description below. And if you found this video valuable, share with a friend. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.